These are the stories making the headlines at this hour. A cold wave continues on Friday with the perceived temperature even lower due to strong winds. Meanwhile, the country is seeing a rapid surge in illnesses related to the cold weather. South Korea's top court ruled in favor of Korean victims of Japan's wartime forced labor, ordering the Japanese companies responsible to compensate the victims. Over in the Czech Republic, a mass shooting at Charles University in Prague has killed at least 14 people. Authorities say the 24-year-old suspected gunman has also died. Good afternoon. A cold wave continues on Friday with the perceived temperature even lower due to strong winds. Meanwhile, the country is seeing a rapid surge in cold-related illnesses. Lee Seung-jae has more.
Thursday was the coldest day of the season so far, with many people on the streets of South Korea struggling to keep themselves warm.
I didn't really notice the cold up to 2 days ago, but today my ears and nose feel like they're frozen.
We arrived in Seoul on 18th of December, and I think today is the coolest.
The cold wave warning is still in effect for most of the country on Friday. And with the wind chill, the perceived temperatures will be even greater for many parts of the nation. Morning temperatures in the metropolitan area, inland and mountainous areas of Gangwon-do Province, Chungcheongbuk-do Province, and northern regions of Gyeongsang-buk-do Province dropped to around minus 15 degrees Celsius. The capital Seoul saw the mercury dipping to minus 13.8 degrees. Snow continues to fall in Jeju and the Jeolla provinces, with the resort island set for 3 to 8 centimeters of snow until Saturday, while the mountain regions of the island will see up to 20 centimeters. 3 to 8 centimeters of snow is forecast on the west coast of Jeolla-buk-do province, West Gwangju, and Jeollanam-do province. Since last Saturday, cold-related illnesses have also been on the rise due to a sharp drop in temperatures nationwide. According to the Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency on Thursday, the cumulative number of patients with temperature-related illnesses nationwide from the 1st to the 20th of this month, when counting began, was 85, while 1 death was reported. The death was reported in Gangwon-do Province, where a man in his 90s was found dead in his home due to hypothermia. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korea's top court ruled in favor of Korean victims of Japan's wartime forced labor, ordering the Japanese companies responsible to compensate the victims. Choi Min-jung reports.
South Korea's Supreme Court has once again ruled in favor of Korean victims of forced labor during Japan's colonial rule between 1910 to 1945. The top court on Thursday upheld rulings that ordered 2 Japanese firms to compensate the victims. Japan's Mitsubishi Heavy Industries and Nippon Steel are ordered to pay a maximum of 150 million won, or around $115,000 to each victim. Combined with extra damages for the delay, they are ordered to pay around $900,000 in total. A total of 11 plaintiffs won the ruling, 4 against Mitsubishi Heavy Industries and 7 against Nippon Steel. However, all the plaintiffs have died of old age since the lawsuit was first filed 9 years ago. Thursday's rulings were the first such outcomes by the top court since 2018. Back then, the South Korean court made landmark rulings on separate forced labor cases, ordering the 2 Japanese companies to compensate other former Korean victims. The 2018 ruling soured relations between South Korea and Japan, as Tokyo argued that related issues were completely settled under a 1965 bilateral agreement. Japan's reaction is not much different this time around.
These rulings are in clear violation of Article 2 of the Japan-Korea Claims Agreement and are extremely regrettable and absolutely unacceptable. We have protested this matter to South Korea.
As the defendants Mitsubishi Heavy Industries and Nippon Steel are likely to continue refusing to pay the compensation, the government is expected to compensate the victims using funds procured through a public foundation. The plan was announced earlier this year to improve relations with Japan.
In line with the government's compensation plan announced in March, we plan to pay the compensation and damages for delay through the Foundation of Victims of Forced Mobilization by Imperial Japan.
With such a plan already in place and taking into account Japan's continued denial, it's unlikely that the Japanese firms will pay the compensation themselves. The Japanese companies have yet to pay the previously ordered compensation, claiming the statute of limitations has passed. But for the very first time, the court on Thursday clarified that this would not be allowed. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
North Korea is set to hold a key parliamentary meeting in January. The North Korean Central News Agency reported on Friday that the regime will convene the 10th session of the 14th Spring People's Assembly on January 15th. The session will address this year's settlement of the implementation of the national budget as well as next year's state budget. The meeting is usually held once a year, but it has recently been increased to twice a year. This year, the regime adopted a budget and specified a policy of strengthening its nuclear force in the North's constitution. Russia says it has established active, comprehensive defense cooperation with North Korea. That is according to the chief of the Russian General Staff Valery Gerasimov on Thursday in a conference with foreign military attaches. He also said the creation of NATO-like military blocs in the Asia-Pacific region, such as AUKUS, and the Trilateral Alliance between South Korea, the U.S., and Japan increase instability in the region and allow member countries to develop nuclear weapons. The remarks come as South Korea and the U.S. have been raising concerns about strengthening military cooperation between Moscow and Pyongyang following a summit held in September. The year 2023 saw a notable change in South Korea's foreign policy. Looking back on the past year, our Yoon Jung-min had a chance to talk to VOA correspondent Jessica Stone and Japan correspondent for the Straits Times, Walter Sim. Take a look.
Jessica, first, back in April, Presidents Yoon and Biden adopted the Washington Declaration, and in August, they cemented their trilateral cooperation with Japan's Prime Minister Kishida through the Camp David principles. How does Washington assess its renewed relationship with Seoul and Tokyo, and what does it mean for the U.S. to align its collective efforts with allies and partners at a time when the stakes are high on the Korean Peninsula and around the world?
Well, we are seeing a deepening of the relationship, not only between the U.S. and South Korea, but between the U.S., South Korea, and Japan, because throughout the year, we've seen a series of meetings throughout the government. So according to the U.S., these alliances are critical. They're a critical part of countering North Korea's military and nuclear program, as well as its space satellite activities. Allegations that North Korea is providing weapons to Russia, which Moscow denies, in its fight against Ukraine. And allies are preparing for more North Korean threats in 2024. And so these are all kinds of reasons why the deepening of these ties, not just because of what's happening on the Korean Peninsula, but also because of North Korea's weapons proliferation around the world.
Right, there is a host of issues. And Walter, the relations between Seoul and Tokyo marked a turning point in March. By that, I meant the better trade relations and the two leaders' frequent meetings. What's the atmosphere in Tokyo like regarding a thaw in the bilateral relationship this past year?
Well, the atmosphere has definitely been very positive. So Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida obviously sees South Korean President Yoon as a foreign leader whom he can trust over their multiple meetings, as you pointed out. But of course, there are still obstacles to their relationship, such as the South Korean court ruling this month that ordered Tokyo to pay about 200 million won to each of the 16 comfort women defendants. But the fact that the news cycle has, at least in Japan, really moved on suggests that the government wants to really manage its ties with South Korea to prevent relations from worsening. Of course, this positive mood has spillover effects. It has really benefited cultural ties. So we see Korean food, Korean culture, Korean music, K-pop becoming extremely popular in Japan, I think.
And Walter, the leaders often describe North Korea's provocations as unprecedented this year. There was a rare Kim Jong-un-Putin summit in September. Ever since that, Pyongyang's military ties with Moscow have gotten closer than ever. That really culminated with North Korea launching a military spy satellite with help from Russia as it continues to advance its nuclear and missile programs, as well as cyber threats. What are the power dynamics in East Asia like, involving China and Russia? Where does the Seoul-Washington-Tokyo security cooperation stand in this region?
Well, there definitely is cause, and I don't think the leaders were, overstating the threat when they described Pyongyang's provocations as unprecedented. So definitely there is a lot of room, as Jessica mentioned earlier, for very close security collaboration and coordination in the region between South Korea, the US, as well as Japan. But if I may add on to that, I also do see Japan and South Korea hoping to maintain stable relations with China, and this is obviously evident from their recent trilateral foreign ministers meeting in Busan. That ended in a pledge for a leader summit meeting as soon as possible. As Jessica pointed out, if tensions were to rise even further over the Taiwan Strait, Japan and the United States would surely want to involve the South Korean security apparatus even more, alongside the US forces in South Korea, to help contain tensions over the Taiwan Strait as well.
Jessica, eyes are on the 2024 U.S. presidential election. How might the election results affect its bilateral ties with South Korea and the three-way cooperation with Japan? Are we going to see a dramatic change in policy regarding the Korean peninsula depending on the election results?
I think the linchpin to answer that question is whether or not Joe Biden wins, in which case we'll see a continuation of the existing policy of deepening alliances throughout the Indo-Pacific between the U.S. and its Indo-Pacific partners. But if Donald Trump wins, who is the leading nominee in the Republican fight, we're likely to see some possible changes, particularly in the U.S.-South Korea relationship.
Walter Shim, Japan correspondent of the Straits Times, and Jessica Stone, correspondent of Voice of America. Thank you for your time.
South Korea's National Assembly has passed a budget for next year worth some $500 billion. This comes 3 weeks later than the initial deadline due to disputes over cuts in R&D spending. Our Moon Hye-ryun has the details.
After months of debate, the country's spending plans for the coming year are set. The National Assembly passed the budget bill in a plenary session on Thursday. While the statutory processing deadline was almost 3 weeks ago, the two rival parties had failed to reach an agreement until now. There's been several changes made to the proposal submitted by the Finance Ministry in August, from the total budget to how much has been allocated to each sector. The total budget is some 656.6 trillion Korean won, or roughly $500 billion. But that's around $180 million lower than the proposed amount. Fiscal soundness is becoming increasingly important due to the country's rising debt to GDP ratio. The projected debt to GDP ratio for 2024 is 51%. As a result, the government proposed cutting the budget for the R&D, education and public administration sectors to reduce spending. But the unprecedented slash in the research and development sector sparked debate, as it's the first time since 1991 that R&D has seen a decrease compared to the year before, with the proposed budget seeing a 16.6% drop from 2023. The final budget saw increases in budgets for science and technology, industry, SMEs and energy, social welfare and transport, but drops in public administration and local government budgets, as well as a decrease in the national defense budget compared to the proposal. The budget bill proposed earlier this year had a focus on strengthening social welfare, and this was reflected in the final spending plan for 2024. There was a concentration on supporting young people in particular. An additional $53 million designated for extending housing support for young people, and nearly $17 million for an initiative to give young people discounts for using public transport. It's not just young people, however, who will be benefiting from the changes in the budget proposal. An extra $4.3 million has been added to support farmers and fishermen with their electricity bills. And the pension system for the handicapped will see the biggest rise since 2013 with an additional $21 million. Meanwhile, the development project in the reclaimed wetland area of Saemangum was another major point of contention. And the two parties agreed to increase its budget by $230 million. Moon Hae-ryeon, Arirang News.
Over in the Czech Republic, a gunman shot dead 14 people and injured 25 more at Prague's Charles University on Thursday. The shooting took place in an area close to where tourists and students would normally enjoy the view of the Old Town Square. The gunman has been confirmed dead. Lee Eun-jin reports.
The Philosophy Department building in Prague's Charles University on Thursday was the scene of the deadliest attack in modern Czech history. According to officials, 14 people were shot dead at the university and 25 others were injured, while warning that the death toll could rise. Prague's police chief also confirmed that the gunman was also dead. But due to devastating injuries, it is not yet clear if he killed himself or died while exchanging gunfire with officers. They also confirmed that there was nothing to suggest that he had an accomplice. The shooter legally owned several guns and was described as an excellent student with no prior criminal record. Police also believe the gunman killed his own father in his hometown just west of Prague before heading to the university. And later on Thursday, based on a search of the gunman's home, he is now also suspected of killing a man and a 2-month-old baby girl in Prague on December 15th. The Czech government declared Saturday, December 23rd, a national day of mourning to honor the victims. The Czech Interior Minister said that the shooting had no connection to international terrorism, while President Petr Pavel asked for respect for those killed.
I'm calling on everybody that they don't abuse this tragedy, that it's not abused politically, that it's not used to attack the police, that it's not used to spread misinformation. And this call is to everybody, to politicians, to the media, to citizens, to everybody who has access to social media. Because we need, in a situation like this, is first and foremost is piety, restraint, and togetherness.
The building where the shooting took place is in Jan Pala Square, a busy tourist area in Prague's Old Town. Just a few minutes walk from the picturesque Old Town Square, a major tourist attraction where a popular Christmas market attracts thousands of visitors. Previously, the nation's worst mass shooting was in 2015 when a gunman opened fire in the southwestern town of Uherský Brod, killing 8 before fatally shooting himself. Lee Eun-jin, Arirang News.
Hamas says if Israel wants its hostages to be returned alive, there is no choice but to end the war in Gaza. According to the spokesperson of Hamas militant wing, the Al-Qassam Brigades, the release of more hostages depends on whether or not Israel ends its aggressions. He added that Israel would not be able to achieve its goal of eliminating the militant group. The group also released a video of the 3 Israeli male hostages killed in error by the Israel Defense Forces last week, saying Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was responsible for their deaths. China has announced that it will ban exporting technology used to extract and separate rare earth materials. According to Reuters, the ban was put in place to protect China's dominance over rare earth materials, as well as for reasons of national security as Western countries, including the U.S., try to launch their own operations. Production technology for rare earth metals and alloy materials, along with manufacturing tech for rare earth magnets, were also included in the export prohibitions. Rare earths are 17 metals used to produce electrical magnets used in electric vehicles and wind turbines. China accounts for 70% of global rare earths production. South Korean international football player Hwang Hee-chan has signed a long-term contract extension with Wolverhampton Wanderers. The English Premier League club announced on Thursday that the club's top scorer will be staying at Molineux for another 5 years until 2028. It also lauded Hwang's performances this season as scintillating, as he sits among the Premier League's top scorers this term. The attacker moved to Wolverhampton alone in 2021 and scored on his debut. A live performance album by South Korean pianist Lim Yunchan has been named among the best classical music albums of 2023 by the New York Times. Announced on Thursday, the list features the album live from the Cleburne Liszt Transcendental Etudes, which is a remastered recording of his performance at the Van Cliburn International Piano Competition last year, where he became the youngest winner of the prestigious competition at 18. The paper also acknowledged Im's infinite possibilities, referring to him as accomplished technically and refined musically.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. Former New York mayor and longtime associate of former President Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy on Thursday, days after being ordered to pay almost $150 million in a defamation case. 79-year-old Giuliani was sued for defamation by two former Georgia election workers who he claimed had tried to steal votes from Donald Trump during the 2020 presidential election. An 8-person federal jury in Washington ordered Giuliani to pay $148 million in damages to the plaintiffs Ruby Freedom and Wandrea Moss last week. Giuliani's bankruptcy filing showed millions of dollars in unpaid taxes and legal fees, listing nearly 20 creditors, including Hunter Biden, who sued him in September. In Ukraine, the country's parliament passed a new law on Thursday to legalize medical marijuana, with thousands suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder due to the war with Russia. The new law, proposed by Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal, passed by a 248-vote majority in the 401-seat parliament in Kiev and will come into effect 6 months after President Volodymyr Zelensky signs the bill. According to one lawmaker, medical cannabis is needed and will benefit 6 million Ukrainians, including cancer patients. While the law will allow cannabis to be obtained with a doctor's prescription, recreational use of cannabis will remain a criminal offense. With Christmas Day just around the corner, celebrations and decorations are lighting up all parts of the world. From snowy South Korea's Christmas markets to London's glamorous boutique retail streetlights, and from Sydney's summertime harbour displays and decorations to Bogota's Christmas botanical gardens, the world is celebrating the festive season as we approach the year's end. War-torn Ukraine is also preparing a celebration of their first Western calendar Christmas on December 25th in an effort to erase Russian influence of celebrating the holiday on January 7th, according to the Julian calendar. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Today is winter solstice and we're having another numbingly cold day. The biting wind is dragging down the feels-like temperatures even lower, with cold wave alerts remaining in place for most places. Heavy snow on Jeju is causing headaches for travelers planning to spend a Christmas holiday on the island. Jeju and the west coast will continue to see snow through tomorrow morning, with heavy snow alerts issued in those areas. Mountainous regions on Jeju could see more than 30 centimeters of massive snowfall. The west of Jeolla provinces could receive more than 10 centimeters. East Coast regions, meanwhile, are under strong wind and dry alerts, so fire safety is a must there. As you can see, the nation is going through frightful winter weather this week. And highs in Seoul gets to -7 degrees, Busan at 1 degree Celsius. It will continue to feel like being in a freezer through tomorrow. That much more bearable winter weather is on tap from Christmas Eve. Take care, as many are coming down with a cold. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Now, in this extreme cold, you need to be aware of cold-related illnesses like hypothermia, which occurs when your body temperature drops to below 35 degrees Celsius. The average is 37. Shivering is likely the first thing to notice, followed by mumbling and memory loss, and possibly loss of consciousness. Another danger is frostbite, which causes pain, numbness, and even permanent damage. You need to seek emergency care for any of these symptoms and warm yourself as you wait. In case of frostbite, take off any accessories that disrupt blood circulation and don't massage the area to avoid greater damage. And be aware that you may not realize you have these until someone else points them out for you. So do look out for each other. That is all for today. Thanks for watching.